When the auctioneer slammed the gavel down and announced, "Sold for $3,000, I felt a rush of adrenaline flood through my veins. I had no idea why I'd just spent that much on a storage unit I hadn't even stepped inside yet. All I had to go on was a sliver of something red peeking out from under a dusty tarp at the very back. It was a risky move. The other bidders had dropped out long before it hit $2,000, which told me either I was about to hit the jackpot or I had just made one of the most expensive mistakes of my life. The storage unit was in a forgotten row, far from the main buildings, the kind of place where time seemed to move slower. The red metal door was rusted along the bottom, and the padlock looked ancient. I handed over my receipt. The auction staff cut the lock, and the door rattled upward with a metallic groan. The smell hit first, a mix of oil, dust, and something faintly sweet, like old leather. My heart was pounding as the sunlight spilled into the dark space, illuminating shapes hidden under years of neglect. Boxes stacked haphazardly, a few rusted tools scattered across the floor, and there, at the very back, was that flash of red I'd seen before. I stepped inside, careful not to trip over the clutter. The closer I got, the more it became clear. This wasn't just some random object. The red paint gleamed even through the dust. The tarp covering it was thin and brittle, frayed at the edges like it had been there for decades. I grabbed the corner and pulled. The tarp slid away with a whisper, revealing the unmistakable curves of a sports car. My breath caught in my throat. It wasn't just any sports car. The lines, the slope of the hood, the prancing horse emblem faintly visible on the grille. It was a Ferrari, but something about it was different. The body shape wasn't quite like any Ferrari I'd seen before. The front end was sharper, the wheel arches wider. It looked almost like a concept car, something you'd expect to see under spotlights at an auto show, not hidden away in a dusty storage unit. The paint had dulled over time, but underneath, the car was immaculate. No rust, no dents, just perfection frozen in time. I walked around it in awe. The interior was wrapped in protective plastic, like it had been preserved for a museum. On the passenger seat sat a small leather folder. My hands trembled as I picked it up and flipped it open. Inside were documents in Italian, blueprints, test reports, and a title page that read, Progetto 641, Prototipo. My heart skipped a beat. I didn't speak Italian fluently, but I recognized enough to understand what I was holding. This was a prototype vehicle, a one-of-one test model built by Ferrari, and it wasn't even supposed to exist. The more I read, the crazier it got. This car had been developed in the late 1980s, as part of an experimental program. It was meant to test a new chassis design for a future supercar, but according to the notes, the project had been shelved before production, and all prototypes were ordered to be destroyed. Yet here one was, sitting in front of me. I felt like I'd stumbled into a secret the world wasn't supposed to know about. My hands shook as I reached for the key, a small black fob with the Ferrari logo. I couldn't resist. I slid into the driver's seat, the leather sighing softly under my weight. The dashboard lit up in a warm amber glow when I turned the key. The engine didn't just start, it roared to life. The sound wasn't like any Ferrari I'd heard before. It was deeper, angrier, almost primal. The entire storage unit seemed to vibrate. I shut it off quickly, afraid I'd attract too much attention. My mind was racing. Who had stored this here? How had it survived all these years without being destroyed? And why was it abandoned in a unit that was now legally mine? I went back to the folder, digging through the papers until I found a name. It wasn't an Italian executive. It was a man from right here in the United States, a former test driver for Ferraris North American division. The pieces started to fit together. Maybe he'd been told to scrap the prototype and just couldn't do it. Maybe he'd hidden it away here, intending to come back for it. But for whatever reason, he never did. As the sun dipped lower, the red paint of the car seemed to glow in the golden light. I knew I had to get it out of here, fast. The last thing I needed was for word to get out, and for someone to start questioning the legality of my ownership. I called a friend with a covered transport truck. "I need you here now," I told him, "and bring the kind of straps they use for million-dollar cars." When he arrived and saw the Ferrari, his jaw dropped. "You're kidding me," he muttered, circling it like a predator. This is insane." We loaded it carefully, securing it like it was made of glass. I kept glancing over my shoulder, half expecting some official-looking guys in suits to show up and take it away. But no one came. By the time the truck's doors closed, the sky was dark. My friend gave me a long look. "You know," he said, "you could sell this for more money than you'd ever need in your lifetime." I nodded slowly, but deep down, I wasn't sure I could let it go. There was something magical about it. The secrecy, the history, the fact that I was probably the only person alive who even knew it still existed. For now, it's safe, locked away in a private garage. I'm still researching its origins, still trying to piece together the full story of how it got from Ronello to a dusty storage unit in the middle of nowhere. But one thing's for certain, paying $3,000 for that storage unit might have been the best decision I've ever made. And maybe, just maybe it's the kind of find that happens once in a lifetime. I barely slept that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that glowing red paint under the dim light of the storage unit. I could hear the engine's growl replaying in my mind like an echo from another world. By morning, I'd made up my mind. I needed to know exactly what I had. I drove over to the private garage, where we'd left the Ferrari, and unlocked the steel doors. The sunlight poured in, hitting the car's curves like a spotlight. It didn't even look real. I started by going through the leather folder again. There were more documents I hadn't noticed before, sketches of alternative designs, handwritten notes in Italian, and what looked like a series of photographs taken in a factory. In the photos, I saw the car surrounded by engineers, its body half-finished, wires spilling from the dashboard like veins. One page had an official-looking stamp on it, riservato, non divulgare, reserved, do not disclose. I felt a chill. Then, in the bottom of the folder, I found something stranger, a small, sealed envelope. It wasn't labeled, but the paper was brittle with age. I tore it open and found a single Polaroid photo inside. It showed the car parked in front of a warehouse, the same car, unmistakably, but standing beside it was a man in racing overalls, his face half shadowed by the brim of his cap. On the back of the photo, in smudged ink, were the words, "If you're reading this, you found it. Keep it hidden. They'll come looking." My pulse quickened. Who was they? I decided to dig deeper. I ran the man's name from the other documents, through every search engine I could think of. What I found was unsettling. He'd worked as a test driver for Ferrari in the late 80s, but in 1990, he'd vanished from public record entirely. No interviews, no racing appearances, no news. Just gone. And then, just when I thought the trail was cold, I found an old forum post from 2004 on a niche automotive website. The username was F40Ghost, and the message read, "Some things you find are worth more than your life. If you come across a red prototype, with the number 641 on the frame, don't tell anyone, not even Ferrari." The post had no replies. The account was deleted shortly after. I sat back in my chair, staring at the screen. It was becoming clear that this car wasn't just valuable, it was dangerous to own. Later that afternoon, I decided to document every inch of it. I took hundreds of photos, the exterior, the interior, the engine bay, the chassis number stamped under the hood. That's when I noticed something odd. The chassis number had been deliberately scratched, as if someone had tried to erase it. Only part of it remained visible, 6 for 1p. I sent the photos to a trusted friend who deals in rare cars. An hour later, he called me back, whispering like he was afraid someone would overhear. "Do you have any idea what you've got there?" he said. "I think so," I replied. "But tell me anyway." "That's not just a prototype. That's a lost development mule for a Ferrari Formula One project. It's worth, well, I don't even know how to put a number on it. If this got out, collectors would kill for it. And I mean that literally." He advised me to keep it hidden, avoid registering it, and never post about it online. But that advice came too late. The next day, I noticed a black SUV idling across the street from the garage. Same spot, all day. The windows were tinted so dark I couldn't see inside. That night, I moved the Ferrari to another location, a warehouse owned by a friend outside the city. We did it under cover of darkness, loading it into a transport truck with no markings. Still, the feeling of being watched never went away. A week later, a plain envelope showed up at my front door. No return address. Inside was a single sheet of paper, with one line typed in bold. "You have something that belongs to us." No name, no instructions, no threats. Just that. I knew then that keeping this car was going to be more complicated than I'd ever imagined. Part of me wanted to cash out immediately, find a private buyer overseas, make a fortune, and disappear. But another part,